Hey everybody, Eric Schweitzer here, back for another episode of Your Favorite Game. Joined today by my two favorite co-hosts, George Fastest Fingers Foster.
Oh, I hate that. Hello. Never call me that again.
And press F to pay respects, Stacy Henley.
Hello.
Today we're here to talk about Quicktime Events. And as often is the case on the show, we're covering a mechanic, a much derided mechanic. I think that there is clearly a right way and a wrong way to do QuickTime events.
Yes.
And I think from doing episodes like this where we cover these sort of like cliche or overdone mechanics, I think what I found is that there's a reason so many games do these things, and it's because they're actually pretty good and they work most of the time, right? So I have some really good examples, and I have some bad examples too, and I think it'll be pretty obvious why some of these are good and some are bad. Before we dive into it, what are your general feelings about QuickTime events?
I love them. For rarely on this show, I'm usually quite negative, which is uncharacteristic of me.
It's not at all how it is off camera. You are usually the most positive one about everything in games.
It's weird, right?
It is.
Yeah. I can remember bad examples. I think all three of us can say like the ones that are bad stick out more than the ones that are good, which is why they have like an overlaying sense of badness to them. But generally, I think they're cool. Like I've never really seen the complaints. Like I get it with a lot of the stuff we've talked about, like water levels and stuff like that. But no, I'm all in.
Yeah, we did Detective Vision last week, and I think that's another one where it became apparent, as we were discussing, I think also experiencing it in real time, it almost felt mandated that certain games have Detective Vision and it didn't really fit. And I think QuickTime events are like that. There's some games that are really fast and frenetic that I think really suit QuickTime events, especially some of the older games where, 12 to 15 hours used to be a long video game. And it's not anymore. So I think the extra time that games took, probably some games that came along and did realism a little bit more organically. We had some bad things to say about The Last of Us last week, but that's probably a really good example of, mixing actual gameplay into animations in a way that didn't require QuickTime events. So I think it just got kind of left behind, and it doesn't really belong. I do have a couple of examples of it, but I don't think it really belongs in like a 30 to 40 hour photorealistic experience. It feels like something from an arcade game, and when games felt like they belonged in arcades, that worked. And I think it's probably just had its time. But looking back on it for this, and just in general, because some of my favorite games use them, I think whenever you play an older game that has them, it's very rare that I think, oh, this doesn't work. It's more the more modern examples, I think, where they feel maybe wedged in.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I totally agree. I can't help but still feel the novelty of them just because of growing up and watching how they evolved and watching how cutscenes evolve. Like I've been playing games since before cutscenes existed, and watching games become more cinematic. Thank you. Become like more cinematic, and then seeing the way that that obviously QuickTime events are something you can only do in games, and it's very, very unique to games, and sort of seeing how games adapted short films, right? Cutscenes. It's was always really cool, and I get how it's become overdone or it's been poorly utilized, but I still am kind of impressed just by the idea of it, because it reminds me of the first time I played a game of a QuickTime event and how impressive it was. Okay, cool. Well, as always, I have a whole bunch of games to talk about. I think this was a pretty easy one to find examples for. It is Stacy's turn to go first this week. So, Stacy, can you tell us your favorite game with QuickTime events?
My favorite game with QuickTime events is actually a repeat of a game I've not only used before, but used in one of the episodes George has just mentioned. Because my favorite game with QuickTime events is also my favorite game with water levels, which would make it Tomb Raider Legend.
Yes.
I had a couple that I was going to pick for this. I've got a list of like 10. that I think are decent examples. And there was 2 games that I was between, 2 of which I would count amongst my all-time kind of top 10 sorts of games. But I always like, in the spirit of the show, to pick a game that I think most suits the prompt as opposed to just my favorite game that happens to have this in. And Tomb Raider Legend is really built around QuickTime events. They have specific cutscenes where Lara will be jumping or dodging a trap. You've got to tap a certain button in time or a direction. But there's also the adrenaline sections where the game kind of changes perspective a little bit, and it's all about performing a certain platforming jump in a specific amount of time. There's no actual timer on the screen, so it feels a little bit more immersive, but there's a logo comes up in the bottom corner that kind of lets you know you're up against a very, very short clock, as opposed to most of Legend where you kind of wander around and do traps and things. So yeah, I love the Tomb Raider series. I've mentioned it a few times on this show as kind of side examples, but Legend is my favorite. I still think that's the pinnacle of what Tomb Raider can be, and part of that is how well it uses stunts. And even the Survivor trilogy, the 2013 reboot, and then Rise, not so much Shadow, kept a lot of that spirit in there. The big section that I think a lot of more modern Tomb Raider fans will remember, that was also in the movie, where Lara runs down the plane and has to jump off the edge of it. That is from Tomb Raider 2013, but it always felt like it was from Tomb Raider Legend, mainly because there is a plane sequence in Tomb Raider Legend that plays out quite similarly. And I think the way they use it completely understands that Lara is an action hero. And I think some of the modern games lose that understanding of her. She has a personality, but she needs to be always doing things that are high octane in order to really be Tomb Raider. And I think Legend understood that best because it was so globe-try as well.
What's the like fail state if you miss a prompt?
You see like a gruesome animation. If there's like a one where saws, pendulums swing at Lara, they'll hit you, they'll slice you. Obviously, it was 2006, I think, so the graphics weren't like horribly realistic. They're more realistic actually in 2013 when you can see I get like stabbed by the iron underneath the water. But you see a death animation basically. Like there's not a kind of never mind. If you don't hit the button in time, whatever Lara's doing, she won't do. She won't grab the ledge. She won't make the jump with her whip. She'll get hit by one of the traps and die in that way. The boulder will crush her. So it's a very clear part of the game, and that makes it quite intense and exciting, because I think for Legend, probably more than any other Tomb Raider game at least, the big draw for me was replaying it. It's the only game in Tomb Raider where I've ever really bothered with the time trial nature of it. But you could get the gold and silver and bronze ratings in Tomb Raider for kind of doing things without dying and in certain times, and that really pushed you to nail the QuickTime events. And there were some levels where you could skip them entirely because you would drop on a certain ledge and that would do different. The Kazakhstan level, you could cut a lot of time off, I remember.
Wow.
So there's
speedrunner Henley.
The only game that I could ever speedrun. So yeah, they really have an impact on you. And I know the problem with that QuickTime events is if you fail them, you just kind of watch yourself fail over and over again. But it felt a bit more tactile, I guess, with Legend.
And you were expecting them. It's not as if you were watching a cutscene and then all of a sudden they wanted you to push a button. Like it was integrated way better than that.
Yeah, you would be playing so you would be, running out of a temple that's collapsed. You've taken a relic and it's falling down around you. Something's happened, Natla's arrived, whatever. And it would suddenly shoot to a cutscene, so you were no longer controlling how Lara ran. But then it would show, as I said, the first one is the pendulum, and the floor opens up beneath you. So you see the pendulum, you've got to go weave left, and then push X or whatever it is to jump over the thing, and then you're running again. So it's kind of in motion that it happens, which, when you have the longer cutscenes, which obviously you do, because Legend does have quite a substantial narrative to it, they're just movies. I can't remember a time when it was like, oh, this guy's talking. If you push this button, you can shoot him in the face. It was very gameplay oriented, which I think makes it a lot better. And there was such variety to it as well, because sometimes you would do them and Lara would like backflip over something, and you would see a relic. You had to find like relics and again like secrets. And the only way you could know it was there, other than having looked it up previously, was to do the Quicktime event and then be locked out of it. Because then obviously you couldn't go back because you're not in full control. So you'd see a relic, and then the scene would move on. You can't turn around because like the boulders slammed behind you or whatever's happened.
Oh no!
So then you had to replay the level and figure out, right, I need to figure out how to get under this place to get to where the relic. And they used that really deliberately. Like they knew that the first time playing it, you would have no idea.
Yeah. That gives me anxiety just to think about
not like that.
Showing me the thing I missed. But I think that's a really good example of the type of QuickTime event that people associate, that people have bad associations with, except this is when it's done really well, right? It's
a traditional QuickTime event, I think is what I'd call it.
Yeah.
That's what jumps to mind first.
It's when you're in it, you're playing an action sequence that transitions to an action cutscene, and you're prepared, right? You're like in the zone already.
Yeah.
And it feels like a continuation of the gameplay because it is, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, all of a sudden I have to push a button or I have to watch this cutscene again. And I think that's the type of that, because there's QuickTime events where I think there's kind of three different versions. There's you fail and you have to rewatch the scene.
Mm-hmm.
There's you can't fail because the scene's actually going to stop until you hit the button. And then there's if you fail, something different happens.
Yes.
And the one people hate is you failed, now rewatch this cutscene. But Tomb Raider's a really good example of like you're not mad at the game when you fail, you're mad at yourself, and that somehow feels better.
Yeah, and I think because of the very level styled version of Legend, you went to Bolivia, you went to Peru, you went to Kazakhstan, England, etc. Tokyo probably has the best one, actually. But because of that, you knew that you were going to get one of these QuickTime events pretty quick near the start. You might get one in the middle, depending on what the mission is, and you're going to get one right at the end. And you were reliant on that structure. Whereas in 2013, because it was far more open, you'd just kind of be wandering around, and maybe it'd be a cutscene, or maybe you'd just kind of stumble onto something, and you'd suddenly be like sliding down a rocky hillside, or in the plane, the famous one, and then you'd be asked to push buttons, and you'd be like, "But you told me a cutscene was happening." Do you know what I mean? Like it kind of they surprised you because they were not hidden in the open world, because Tomb Raider, I don't think, was fully open world in that sense. It was still quite linear the way it fed you through the first time. But it didn't have the very coherent levels of, you are in Tokyo, we are going to take you back to the checkpoint just before you jump over the buildings on the motorbike, which is what the Tokyo one was. It was just kind of, you might randomly come across this, and then we're going to show Lara dying in a really graphic, painful way over and over again.
It was a lot, considering like I never liked it. I know it was a big thing at the time, but considering it's Lara Croft, like such a beloved character, they really went overboard in showing like how she could die.
It was a really strange one because I liked that Tomb Raider 2013. It was a fully fledged like reboot of it. It went back to Lara's not a Tomb Raider. This is kind of Lara's first mission. You were there when her father dies, which is not how it happened in the original story. You were there, but you were like a child on a plane. And in some of the comics, you weren't even there. You just kind of heard about it. This went, no, they're on an expedition together. It's Lara's first expedition, and her dad dies, and therefore she has no idea what to do with herself. I thought that was a good way of opening it, and it helps that Lara is kind of incompetent at the start. It kind of count as the... This was a very, very popular phrase on Reddit when doing it. I can't remember. It kind of countered the Mary Sue allegations that she might have otherwise faced. But they were so graphic. It was like, so if this happens, she's going to drown. No, she's going to go underwater, but then she's going to impale herself on a wrecked ship, bleed out, scream, all the thing's going to go red, and then she's going to try and dig herself out with a pickaxe, make the wound larger, and then die. And that's going to happen every time.
Inhaling as well. Yeah. Ugh.
It was always a really shuddering impalement where she would look at the wound and then scream.
Yeah, the one that really has scarred me, that I can picture it in my mind so clearly still, is from the first game in the Survivor trilogy.
Yeah.
What's it called?
That was just Tomb Raider.
Just Tomb Raider.
It's just called Tomb Raider. You're like going down.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Like a river or something. It's like a rapids, and you have to dodge the trees as you're going. Yeah. And if you don't, the tree goes under her head and up out, and she doesn't die right away. She's just like grabbing it,
gurgling. It's horrible. Yeah, too far.
Crazy.
That never happened in Legend. She would get injured. She would fall to her death. She would die through them, but it wasn't quite as gratuitous.
Yeah, tree.
What's your favorite character die?
Nice one. Good choice. Okay, I think we're ready to move on. George, what's your favorite game with QuickTime Events?
Ooh, well, my favorite game with QuickTime Events is also my favorite game of all time, Kingdom Hearts 2. And
shocker.
Yeah, I know. Actually, you know what? What's funny about this is that for the whole hour before we recorded this, I had a completely different choice. I was like, oh yeah, okay, that's my example. And then it clicked in my head that reaction commands from Kingdom Hearts 2 are just QuickTime Events.
Eric, this one's all yours.
Yes, they fully are. I knew there would be some kind of. Go on.
Well,
why
elaborate.
aren't they QuickTime Events?
First tell me why.
Okay, so reaction command, Stace, because you don't know Kingdom Hearts 2.
No, I have no idea. I don't know.
Basically, every enemy in the game has a unique reaction command, and they're little signs that pop up in the middle of a fight that say, like, do this move. And then if you do it, then you get, like, a special attack. Or in a boss fight, like, sometimes it's the big cinematic moment. If you don't, then nothing happens. But to my definition, that is totally a QuickTime event.
I feel I'm creating this definition right now, but I feel like a QuickTime event has to be in a cutscene. It can't be.
They are sometimes in cutscenes.
Yeah, so the ones that are in cutscenes are QuickTime events. The ones where you're in a fight and then it says press triangle to do this attack is not a quick
time. No, I disagree.
Does the game freeze? Because a game that we all love, that I feel has quick time events, but they're not in a cutscene, Guardians of the Galaxy, the game will pause and it will say, move the left stick and the right stick inwards to make Star-Lord's things go. Does that happen in Kingdom Hearts?
No, that's why I like them so much. They're almost completely optional, but the sort of variety they add to combat is one of the reasons why Kingdom Hearts 2 has the best combat out of the series. Like, they're not in any other game, really.
Yeah, but it's like saying a parry is a quick time.
No,
what I'm picturing is in like Tekken, and some of the Tekken modes, it'll say, like, do a spinning kick, and it'll come on the screen, it'll be like down, left, circle, square, and that's how you do it. Is it basically like a checklist if you should do this, and you've got to do it in a really short time?
So basically, every time, so every enemy in the game, every Heartless and Nobody, I think, except for like one of them, I think the Shadows don't have one, as far as I remember.
The law's already losing me, just tell me how it works.
Okay, so whenever you're fighting them, if they do a specific thing, then you'll get, like, it'll literally flash up on screen, press triangle to do this move. And sometimes it's really simple, like it's a sidestep. Other times it's like a whole, like almost like a mini game.
All you do is press triangle. It doesn't matter what the...
Not always. So, I knew you'd say that. So in the fight against Xemnas, that's a really good one. When you're doing, this one's more cutscene-y, I guess, but you have like the triangle prompt pop up as you're about to clash, and if you press it at one point, it's like you just counter it, but then if you press it later, it's like a whole other attack animation. I cannot believe that there's debate on this.
Okay, I mean, like, Kingdom Hearts 2 has amazing QuickTime events. It goes out insanely anime, especially at the end where you're slicing buildings in half. With the fight with Riku, where you're like deflecting 1,000,000 bullets, all that stuff is really cool. But just any of the press triangle to do this attack, that can't be a QuickTime.
No, that is so a QuickTime event. You're reacting to it. It's limited time. There is a bonus to doing it.
But then tell me why a parry isn't a QuickTime event.
Because you can do that at any point. You can parry at any point.
You have a specific window of time to parry.
Yeah, but this is even more specific. This is like you're not given this option at all times. Like, you can technically do a parry to every attack in the game. You can't do a reaction command to every single thing that happens.
I don't think that makes it a QuickTime event.
Well, I do. I'm still correct.
Wait, what about the ones in King? I can't believe we picked a game that has QuickTime events and then have focused on.
And now we're debating the ones.
Yeah, well, those are great as well.
Those are great as well. What are the unabashed QuickTime events in Kingdom Hearts 2?
Well, they're kind of as basic as you get, really.
Shogger.
Like you just press triangle and then something happens. But there are some, like the one I mentioned, the Zemnis one, where it's specific timing, and the one that Eric mentioned with the building. I'm stuck on this. I cannot believe.
Really?
I'm hurt. I thought you'd agree.
I mean, you're stretching the definition. I don't know why you're flabbergasted that I'm pushing back.
Every other week.
I think I'm going non-traditional. I'm the new era of QuickTime.
Yeah.
I feel like this is we would do a one on like best games with yellow paint, and you would pick Splatoon because it has yellow paint.
Actually, that's a good idea. I'll bookmark that.
What was the other one you were going to pick? Because I am now curious that you went for.
Well, the other one was going to be Until Dawn, which is just which is just I didn't think there was much to say. Well, that didn't capture my heart as much as Kingdom Hearts 2. There wasn't such a fiery debate that has been happening here.
Until Dawn's a cool one, though.
Yeah, Until Dawn's a good one. I think when I think of QuickTime events, I either think of the more traditional ones like Stace mentioned, where it's this thing happens or you die, or like the new wave of like horror games, like I think of Heavy Rain, Until Dawn, The Quarry.
Well, yeah, Until Dawn, Dark Pictures, and The Quarry are all like the same thing, really.
Yeah.
Well,
I love those games.
I love them as well, but this is where would you consider the contextual prompts you do in Heavy Rain
of course.
And Until Dawn, like even just picking stuff up, would you call that a QuickTime event?
I wouldn't call the ones where it's like, Jason, a QuickTime event, but there are some that you need to do in a certain amount of time. The guy, I can't remember the detective guy. You freaking asshole. Oof. That fella. He's got a load.
What's his name?
Oh, God, who cares? He's got a load, and if you don't do them, he bleeds out of his eyes and dies. Like there's load. I think there's quite a few where they really have
Norman
a countdown.
Jaden, FBI.
There we go.
That was it. Yeah.
Some of them are just kind of you push a button and things happen. But yeah, I think the ones in Heavy Rain do, and I definitely think the ones that Until Dawn does count. What was that, Eric? Sorry.
The quick is essential to the QuickTime event.
Yes,
right. It has to be like an action sequence,
like a limited time
window to parry an attack, perhaps.
To parry
it sounds to me like I'm still correct. Either way, my answer's still Kingdom Hearts, whether we're going with my non-traditional approach or not. Kingdom Hearts 2 still has some
That's right. I'm sure whoever updates the fan wiki for your favorite game will note that you picked Kingdom Hearts 2 this week.
As they should, because I'm right. I'm correct, and I'm sick of being blasted for it. Eric, what is your favorite game with QuickTime events?
All right, I guess we'll move on now. My favorite game with QuickTime events is the first game with QuickTime events.
Ooh.
Before we started the show, George was like, I know exactly what your game is. And I was like, no, you don't. You'll never guess. And I don't think either of you will ever guess my game, which is there a guess?
Is it Shenmue?
Nope.
It must predate Shenmue then. So, like, is it 80s?
Yeah.
Oh, then no.
I wasn't born then. I'm at a disadvantage.
My favorite game with QuickTime events is Dragon's Lair.
Oh, yeah, that is a very good choice. I didn't even think of that.
I was obsessed with Dragon's Lair. So, I'm sure most people know this game, but I'll describe it.
I think they'll know it through reputation. It's one of those games.
If I know it, then most people will.
This is one of just two of Don Bluth's video games. The very famous animator. You probably know him best from An American Tail. Yeah. But so many more. All Dogs Go to Heaven, Anastasia, Rockadoodle.
Anastasia, I loved Anastasia.
I loved Don Bluth movies when I was a kid. I was a big Disney fan, but I was also a huge fan. I've seen All Dogs Go to Heaven a bajillion times. And I first saw Dragon's Lair in an actual arcade as a kid and have never seen it anywhere in real life since then. But I was so mystified by it because it's not like any other game in an arcade. It's hand-drawn like the movies that I watched when I was a kid. It wasn't like, pixel art. It wasn't a fighting game. It was like playing a movie. And I loved it so much. My dad got the CD-ROM version of it. And I played it to death, even though I now as an adult, I've played it, and I realized when I was a kid, I never got past like the second scene.
That thing must have ate so much money in the arcade. Like you.
Oh
you
my god, it was
seconds. Oof.
It's the ultimate quarter swallower for sure. Like, yeah, it's an outrageously hard game because unlike modern QuickTime events, there are no prompts. You watch the animations and you press left or right or attack based on instinct.
I seem to remember it flashing. Was there a re-release of it that had like flashing paths that kind of told you where to go?
Yes, when it came out on, I believe when it came out on iOS, like when it came to like tablets and phones, they added a bunch
that makes
of
a lot
features.
of sense. I hadn't realized it done that now.
Yeah, with like swipe input.
I think it was Xbox Arcade as well, if I remember. I think that's when I remember.
Yeah, it's been on everything by now. Yeah. But yeah, I recall them adding a bunch of stuff like you can't fail basically, so that you can actually get through the whole game, and like adding prompts and stuff. But originally you just had to like kind of watch the screen and react to the things that happened on it, and much like Lara Croft, you got to watch the hero Dirk Dauntless, something like that.
Yeah, the little skinny guy, wasn't he?
Yeah. Watch him get killed in all kinds of crazy ways. And it's such a simple premise, right? It's just like a knight going to a dragon's castle to save a princess, basically. But it's just this string of traps, and they're randomized to a certain extent. You kind of never know which ones are next, and you're just trying to go from scene to scene, and the actual game is sort of just pattern recognition. You just sort of have to memorize when it's time to make an input, and just have that good reaction time. But it was just the coolest thing ever to see a movie, an animated movie as a game. And I've bought every version of it that's ever come out. I even have the 1/8 scale arcade cabinet. I have the miniature arcade cabinet version of it.
That's sick.
I loved Dragon Slayer. He did another game called
themed,
Space
right?
Ace.
Yes.
Oh, I'd not heard of that one.
Yeah, I've seen the death scenes from that. I used to go on YouTube. I was really weird. I'd watch like death scene compilations and Dragon Slayer on there all the time. There's a bit of insight into me.
You used to watch the Lara Croft death scenes over and over again.
I've never played Tomb Raider. I've just seen loads of compilations of Lara dying.
No, it's interesting though, with it being like, as you say, the first one with QuickTime Events, it's almost influenced by, I can't remember exactly what that genre was called, but it was like adventure DOS games, and it would be like, you had to type in the answers. Like you would be like, speak to wizard. Say, I think it's relies on instinct because text-based adventures, thank you, relies on instinct because of no one had said, what if we have a big circle flash on the screen and like a countdown and it goes in slow motion with it, Lara Croft does. All the design choices in Tomb Raider Legend, they come from Shenmue, which George said, the big thing flashes on the screen. It's very focused on kind of quick reactions. Whereas Dragon Slayer wasn't really about reacting, it was about understanding and figuring out and guessing, and to a certain extent, getting you to pay more quarters. But I think that makes it quite a cool version of it, because it almost predates what we think of as a QuickTime event.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely user experience wasn't a big focus back then. It kind of felt like games were made in a way that kind of only made sense to the person that made the game.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you had made the game, you would totally understand what to do. It makes perfect sense. And it took a while before we started adding things to, make it more approachable for people.
And now we circle back around from putting more quarters into just battle passes and skins and grind for 40 hours and you'll get to unlock Mr. Fantastic.
Right. Yep. It's always been about engagement, driving engagement. Yeah. I also thought it was cool that that Dragon's Lair was just a game. You know, it wasn't the All Dogs Go to Heaven, the video game or something, which he could have easily done, and that's what Disney did.
Well, there was an American Tail one, but it wasn't anything like that. It was a classic like pixel platform game.
Yeah, but this was like a Don Bluth game, and I think that really elevates it. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just it feels like a more holistic experience because of that. It's not the game version of something that kind of always feels a bit wonky. We did licensed games a couple of weeks ago and kind of discussed the problems with that. This is unique.
Yeah. Yeah. I love Dragon's Lair, and you know, it doesn't like totally hold up. It's not that complex, but it is cool to think about this game coming out in the 80s and being in arcades alongside Mortal Kombat and stuff. It's just so unique. And like impossible to find now. Like I said, I've never seen it in real life again since I was a little kid. And I've looked for it. I've been to a bajillion arcades. And it's just like it's kind of gone. But it was it was a Laserdisc game. And so it became really hard to maintain. Because those things break down and they're not like other arcade games. Like it was literally playing a movie off of a Laserdisc. So, but the replica I have, it's like fully playable. You know, the Replicade, I think it's called. On the back of it, you can take out the model Laserdisc.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that.
And the disc is in a sleeve and it goes on the turntable. It's pretty cool.
That's cool.
All right. Let's talk about some more. George, you said a whole bunch of them that I had intended to talk about eventually. No, it's fine. So first of all, let's start with Until Dawn and Dark Pictures and all of those. I get, first of all, awesome games. I love them very much.
Yep.
They, unlike Tomb Raider, there is no fail state, right? You're never gonna rewatch a scene because you didn't hit the prompt. When you miss the prompt, the story changes.
Yeah, and there's still a good end. I think there's a good ending you can get from them, but there's no dead end.
It's not a pass fail.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just you're changing the course of the
just
story.
Smith's going to die if you do this.
Die. Yeah. And I like that a lot. I do. There is an element of like I finished the game, but I did it wrong.
Yes,
which can feel a little weird, but you just sort of have to live with that, right? Like you kind of have to accept that going in, and that can be really hard if you're kind of a perfectionist gamer. To not get a complete satisfaction of finishing a game because a bunch of your characters died and you feel like you played the game wrong.
I think that's part of the fun.
Yeah, go on, Church.
Like especially with like, I was thinking about Heavy Rain, and that game is so generous with the lose state. Like I could literally picture now there's like a chase scene with Norman Jayden. He's like going up this like conveyor belt thing, and you have to fail like 10 prompts to die, and they all have to be in a row. But like with Until Dawn and The Quarry and all that, because they play into the whole, you know, they're a horror film. People are supposed to die. That's part of the fun. They make it so easy to die there. Like I remember my first time on Until Dawn, most of my people died. Like I thought I did everything right, but nope.
But also like it's a complicated system because it's not just about did you fail the button prompt. It's also about the choices that you made as that character throughout the narrative. And it's a combination of those two things that decide whether characters live or die. And it's so under the hood. It's so like you can't really understand how those consequences come to be. They just kind of are.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're total bollocks, like in Man of Medan.
Sometimes they feel unfair.
Oh, don't even get me right, I've got myself started. Man of Medan, the big twist there that there was no baddie, it was just like gas in the air, like completely ruins it. Like
really?
You make this I hated it. That is like my least favorite of their games, because once you know that, you know, I felt cheated when I accidentally killed one of the people on my team because I thought it was a monster. I was like, haha, you got me, but also like I'm not playing you again. You've lost a fan.
Really?
No, I think though, you talk about being disappointed. Like if you watch a horror film and they all survive, you're disappointed. Like, I love the Scream series, but I remember like leaving the cinema in 6 and thinking, so nobody died. Like, you started with this cast of 4 and returning characters from the other movies, and they're all fine. Like, we saw 2 of them get stabbed in the chest. What do you mean they're fine?
Yeah, you're right.
So
some of them have to die.
Yeah, I think plainly you want like deaths.
That, but I want deaths, but I want the death to feel like my fault. Like in Until Dawn, the guy with the glasses, I think his name's
Chris.
Matt.
Yeah, Chris's death is really harsh.
Chris. Yeah, like if you're like a slight dick towards your girlfriend and she'll lock you out and you'll get like eaten, that feels earned. That feels like whether I failed the Quicktime events or not, like that's on me for acting like a dick. Yeah. But Man of Medan's one is just like, haha, I got you. And no.
Huh. All right. And then you mentioned Heavy Rain, so all of Quantic Dreams games. And you're right. It's really hard to fail those. You have to miss a bunch of and I love the video. I've seen a lot of videos of people intentionally failing. Yeah. And it just makes the scene so funny. Like I think David is the guy in Heavy Rain, right? He's the dad.
Yes, I think so.
Oh God, yeah.
Scott Shelby's the detective. That's the name I remember.
Yeah, there you go. Madison's the reporter.
She's quite hard to keep alive, actually.
Ethan's the dad.
Ethan's
the dad, yeah. Came to me eventually.
The sequence, there's like a foot chase through the neighborhood, and you can just trip over everything, run into everything. Like, it's just a long sequence of him falling down over and over and over again. It's so funny. And the game just keeps going. Like, it doesn't matter. It matters for like some score you get, but it doesn't really change the story. Deeply flawed, but very interesting games. Heavy Rain. So you were saying Man of Medan's reveal made you feel cheated. Heavy Rain's reveal is the one that made me feel so cheated. Yeah, because it lies to you, right?
It just actually, I have origami in my hand.
There are scenes that you play in that game that didn't actually happen. Something different happened, and you find out at the end.
The typewriter.
Nope, actually, that was all fake.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It got me as a kid though. Like I must have been like 12 when that came out, and at the time I was like, "This is art. This is storytelling. Oh my god!" Yeah. So I guess I just grew up.
We should save these ones for when we talk about twists. We've got some other famous ones. God of War.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%.
Very famous for its QuickTime events, both good and bad. God of War 3 has the best and worst of all the QuickTime events. There, you've got on the one hand, you've got gouging out Poseidon's eyes by pushing the sticks in.
Yeah,
amazing,
like in Game of Thrones.
Incredible. And then the worst one ever, which is the sex scene with Aphrodite.
Yep.
The sex QuickTime event, just so gratuitous and juvenile and doesn't age at all. Funny, definitely funny. And then of course, God of War reboot, 2018 God of War, starts with one of the best QuickTime events ever.
And then they picked them out with Balder.
Yeah.
Spoiler, really only halfway through God of War 2018.
Yeah, the first fight with Boulder is iconic and everyone knows it, but also the last fight with Boulder, the way it bookends it,
incredible.
Yeah. The way it brings Atreus into the fight, it's like both sides of that fight, incredible cutscene, QuickTime event fight sequences, and totally seamless with the gameplay, right?
Yeah.
You start pressing buttons because you want to. You're like so eager to hit him back, and you press a button to hit him, and you actually hit him, and there's no way to know where the cutscene has started or ended. You're literally playing a cutscene. I feel like that was such a profound evolution of the QuickTime event.
And it feels so dizzying the first time you do it. The first time you do the first fight, because unless you go into it a little bit later and you kind of know you're in a game and you know about it, you weren't aware. I wasn't aware when I first played it, because I played it at launch, about the single camera gimmick, right? Like the whole God of War is one single unbroken shot. So when you start getting like pummeled through mountains and up through the roof, the camera sweeps around with you. And I know it's a video game that's much easier to do than with, rigging something in live action, because it's all fake, it's all computers. But the motion, it like puts you through really, I think, aids that feeling that it's a very active scene. It's not... You aren't a bystander as you are with some cutscenes because you move with the camera. It feels a lot more connected to the pace and the power that God of War opens with. It has this really slow meandering, chop a tree down, sail the river, and then suddenly your head's spinning. I think that's what makes it great.
Yes.
I think even the tree is a QuickTime event technically because you have to actually do the chopping yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
George thinks anything with a button prompt is a QuickTime event.
Yeah. I still think mine's right. But that one I'm wrong on. But Kingdom Hearts is right. Absolutely.
So many in the original trilogy. So many, maybe in the second trilogy, or not duology too. So many of the QuickTime events are just like mashing a button to move something heavy.
Yeah.
Or to hold something back or open something. And I've never liked the mash. It's hard to think of an example of where mashing the button felt especially satisfying.
When he's just got a really heavy chest and he's got to like lift it up.
When you the head ripping bit, I think that was a mash in God of War 3.
Yeah,
that's right. When
that's a good
one.
When you get the Helios's head.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Helios's head. Yeah. Nothing tops the pressing in the sticks to gouge out the eyes. That's incredible.
I think even, I remember when you fight Zeus, you have to like you're just beating the ever-loving crap out of him, like R1, L1, just smashing him. And like the screen is just filling with blood, so you can't even see. That always really got me.
Nice. In the same vein as Until Dawn and the Quantic Dream stuff would be the Telltale games.
Yeah, I had that on my list. I love the Telltale games. Wolf Among Us, I think, did it best, I would say.
Yeah. I liked the start of Batman. Overall, I didn't love that game.
It's way down my list of Telltale.
But just judging the QuickTime events.
Yeah, I suppose,
Yeah, I think Batman did it pretty well. But yeah, Wolf Among Us, I think, is the one that stands out the most.
Wolf Among Us 2 any day now.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Here's a better example of what George was trying to get at. Mario and Luigi.
And
yes. Oh yeah. Yes. All and Super Mario RPG, like anything like that.
Mario has them
on
as
my
well.
list.
Yeah, you choose an attack and then it goes into a cinematic of that attack, and during that cinematic you have prompts that make your attack stronger or make the combo chain longer.
Clay Obscure is going to have that this year as well. That's their big thing.
Yeah,
I love it.
Combat gimmick.
That's my RPG. Yeah, I love it when they do that. South Park RPGs did them as well. If
South Park
care
did
about
it
them
too.
at all.
Turn-based turn-based combat. Love that.
Love that. I'm going back a little bit, but I do want to mention this because I love this, and I can't remember if it was a QuickTime event. Is the Thor scene at the start of Ragnarok a QuickTime? Because that's really cool. That's the best moment in Ragnarok. Is that actually a QuickTime or not? You fail it.
Yeah, to my memory, how that starts is like he attacks you, so it's not really a quick time.
Do you not have to mash a button to stay awake? There's not push X to get back on your feet.
When he kills you.
When he jolts you with the hammer.
No, that's just a cinematic.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, that doesn't count, but I love that moment.
Not that I know. Apparently, I've been wrong a few times today.
I almost chose Marvel Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Which just
I
think they're just such amazing action sequences. And the integration, sort of like the pressing the sticks to gouge out the eyes, the way that you're using the triggers to fire the webs and stuff like that. I think especially like the intro of the first Spider-Man with Kingpin, I think that's such a cool sequence. It was amazing when they showed that. They showed that as like its own trailer, but then playing it was even cooler because of the interactions, right? Really cool way to make QuickTimes feel immersive. And just like such amazing choreography and camera work, kind of like God of War, just really cool Spider-Man action scenes.
It's a thing that the films have struggled, I think, for a long time to make Spider-Man feel kinetic.
Yes,
I think absolutely. Probably talking wirefilms, only films that do it really successfully. I know people love like some of the backflips that Andrew Garfield does. I never thought it felt as good in Amazing Spider-Man. But I think the game, the Insomniac games at least, do really nail that feeling of free flowing. I know that's not always in the Quicktime events because that's how you just get around the city normally. But I think that helps with that like transition between gameplay and cinematic because it feels so cinematic when you are just moving around the city. You know, Spider-Man moves the way you move him, the way he should move, not just in this kind of clunkier way that they can. It's only when they get a hold of him that he moves like Spider-Man. Like you can make him move like Spider-Man as well, and I think that helps that flow of the game because it doesn't have the one camera thing that God of War has, but it does have a lot of like fluidity to its movements.
Can I just jump in with one that I had pegged as Eric's pick, and I cannot believe we've not mentioned Resident Evil 4.
Yeah. I was about to get there. So this is one of the more divisive ones, right?
I didn't really like it, but I figured you would probably have loved it.
Well, so I guess if you had asked me while I'm in the middle of the Krauser boss fight if I'm having fun, I would definitely have said no, right? But now, sitting here thinking about the fact that Resident Evil 4 has a full QuickTime event boss fight, I think that's really cool and bold and interesting. But I get why people hated it, you know? Because it's just so punishing. And it's like, it's one thing to fail a boss fight and like learn how to counter their moves and then it's a whole other thing to just watch a boss fight over and over and over because you're too slow hitting the buttons. Like I totally get why that's frustrating.
It falls into the category you mentioned before, isn't it? You don't want to be forced to watch a scene over and over again. And they're much longer than obviously we should do the very first one I mentioned today, Tomb Raider ones are 20 seconds. You know, it's like 3 button pushes. Like the one in Resident Evil, it's lengthy.
It's a boss fight. Yeah. So I appreciate it more than I enjoy it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Resident Evil 5 had the boulder punch as well. I always found that quite funny.
That is funny. Yeah. And then for the remake of 4 completely changed that Krauser fight, right?
For the better, I think.
Because they definitely knew that people hated it in the original one. But I think if nothing else, it is definitely interesting. I wanted to shout out Metroid Dread. Not my favorite Metroid, but I think its QuickTime event is really well done. So if you don't recall, basically at the end of every mini boss fight.
Oh yes, yes, I couldn't remember. I do now. Sorry, go on.
yeah. There's a QuickTime event that's like finishing the boss, basically, right? So you get this like cinematic moment with the button prompts and you kill these bosses and it's kind of always the same and you kind of learn this pattern as you progress through the game. And then when you get to the final boss and you beat it, you have to do this. And it's like the moment is like, I've been training for this my whole life, right? Like you're going to do the thing and then you do the thing and it's not the end of the fight. And then of course you become Super Saiyan Samus as you always do. And you get a really satisfying ending, but there's this moment where you're like, I know how to do this and you do the thing and it doesn't work. And I think that's like, it's really well done. It's already a super hard boss fight that will probably take you a long time to get through. And then you get to the end and you get this moment where you're like, I've done it. I'm doing the QuickTime thing and you nail it and it's not enough. And it just makes the boss that much more threatening and imposing and definitely memorable. How about just the idea of rhythm games? How do we feel about that?
I'm sorry, but if I'm not allowed to do reaction commands, I think we've lost the plot at that point. That's a whole other thing.
I thought George would agree.
A rhythm mini game inside a larger game, I think, possibly counts.
Yeah, like a Final Fantasy VII mini game.
No,
not even like necessarily, but like if. Like you've got to do a finishing move, you've got to like do a kind of in the sequence like push down, push left, push X. I think I've got room for that, but I wouldn't say like I don't know, Dancing in Starlight is not a QuickTime event. It's just a game.
Actually, funny you mention that, Eric. One of the boss fights in the first Sly Cooper against the crocodile voodoo person. That's like a press triangle, circle, circle rhythm game. That came to my mind, but I was like, that's stretching it too far. and then I stretched it too far anyway. But
hey,
apparently I have
that's
limits.
just my opinion, George. Somebody thinks you're right. I'm sure of it.
Someone on the official fan page wiki.
Just you watch. I'm going to get a crowd rallying behind me for reaction bands.
Stacey, if not for Tomb Raider, I assume you would have picked a Yakuza.
I like Yakuza. I did have that on my list, but no, I had a one that I think is more of an edge case that I would have picked, which I think is my favorite game of all time, actually the number one on the list. Mass Effect 2. Constantly throughout Mass Effect 2, you have the Renegade and Paragon moments.
Oh, okay.
Where you can interrupt. If you played this, Eric, I'll explain to people who haven't anyway. So there's two, basically, it's not good or bad because Renegade isn't bad. They're just like a rebel. So you can like go off script, like, throw the book out the window. Oh, cool guy. And Paragon is really straight-laced. So at certain times in in cutscenes, you'll get a QuickTime event that'll either flash up left trigger, blue, or right trigger, red. Sometimes both, but very rarely. And if you clicked it, you would do something in fitting to that personality. And you would do a response. The famous one is you go to a jail and the guy is like, oh, you need to surrender your weapons. And if you click Renegade, Shepard pulls the gun and goes, oh, I'll surrender one bullet. Where do you want it? So there's loads of cool stuff like that. And then in 3, you should play 3 as Paragon because everyone kind of dies in 3. And if you do the Paragon, you get to say your last lines to people. Whereas if you don't click it, often a character because you played the game before, is kind of going off to die. And you'll just kind of nod at them and go, Whereas if you click the QuickTime event, you get, oh, you've always been by my side.
One of them's punching a reporter, right?
That's punching the reporter is an in-joke across all. That's like a repeated thing.
Yeah, that's the first one too.
Yeah. I always thought that was a one of the reactions.
It is, but that's like it repeats on itself.
Okay, yeah.
And in the first one, you can hang up on the council. Like the council will call you, and if you click Renegade, you can go hello, goodbye. And just slam the button. You just don't get the cutscene. You don't find out what you were supposed to find out.
That's so funny.
I need to replay.
I'm not entirely sure it's QuickTime because it's literally just like a personality thing. It's like choosing the funny dialogue response, but it does actively affect the game. You have to do it in a certain amount of time, and some of them change gameplay. Like there's a time when the Krogan are patrolling around a derelict ship, and if you push the Renegade, you shoot the air pipe underneath them, which explodes, and then you don't have to have that battle anymore. Other times you'll do things like that, and a scene that would have been resolved peacefully if you'd waited, you end up having to fight people because, you pushed around them in an elevator.
Yeah, I can see why it's an edge case, because it's sort of just a dialogue tree.
Yeah,
thing, but basically. Also it has a timer.
And you can blank as well. You can not respond. Which I think
don't worry, Stace. I'll let you have it. I think this is totally fair. Let's unite against Eric, who's defying QuickTime events.
I didn't know I was going to be so strict with the rules on this one. I think that's about all I have. One of the ones that came up a lot for a bad example was the first Uncharted. And
oh God, yeah.
Yeah, I've kind of blanked this out because this isn't a big part of Uncharted later on, right? I don't think QuickTime events are a big part of the series.
Are you referring to the bear trap thing, the spikes that come up and you have to quickly dodge?
Maybe, you tell me.
That's one of them.
I said, I blanked this out.
No, there's a couple that are just in the cutscenes, aren't like you have to push circle to jump over a ledge or something. To grab a rope or something. In the first one, I'm sure there's bits like that. Like when he's on the roof of something.
I think that
they aren't
the problem
in the
with these
ones.
the problem with these is that they're just like long scenes, and then all of a sudden you have to press a button.
Yeah.
And you don't expect it, and those are the ones people hate. It's like I put the controller down to watch this thing, and all of a sudden I'm scrambling to press a button.
Yeah,
and your controller's just vibrating on the table. It's like no, I hate
that. Okay, cool. You guys have any more you want to touch on?
I had a bad one.
Yeah?
Ninja Gaiden 3, just completely not in the spirit of Ninja Gaiden. Yeah, I know. I've been replaying them all, so it is timely, but that game is absolutely stuff with them. Like it could rival.
Do you think I said it's timely because you've been playing Ninja Gaiden?
No, because the release, but that they tie together. Yeah. But yeah, that game stopped it, and that is just not Ninja Gaiden at all. They are they're flashy, like they serve a purpose, but in previous games that purpose would have just been more gameplay, more battles. So I hate them. Not good.
Well, on that note, those are our favorite games with QuickTime Events, but we want to know your favorite games with QuickTime Events, so leave us a comment and let us know. That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back next week with another episode of Your Favorite Game. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and visit us at thegamer.com. That's The Gamer. No spaces.